Canada just announced today that the Proud Boys would be designated as a terrorist group there. Will you be considering ways to limit the Proud Boys here in the U.S.?
The Republican Party is basically a domestic terrorist cell at this point.
On or before January 20th, Donald Trump will no longer be the commander-in-chief. On January 20th, Donald Trump will become the commander-in-chief of a different army. This army. The greatest threat facing America today comes from within. Radical extreme conservatives, also known as domestic terrorists. They are hidden among us, disguised behind regular jobs. They are your children's teachers. They work at supermarkets, malls, doctors' offices, and many are police officers and soldiers. In the years ahead, Trump will lead his army of domestic terrorists. He will encourage and incite violence. He will play the role of arsonist and fireman. He will start a civil war and then say things were more peaceful when he was president. We have to fight back. In this new war, the battlefield has changes. Computers can be more valuable than guns. And this is what we need now more than ever, an army of citizen detectives. I'm proposing we form a citizen army. Our weapons will be computers and cell phones. We, who are monitoring extremists on the internet and reporting their findings to authorities. Remember, before the Navy SEALs killed Osama bin Laden, he had to be found. He was found by a CIA analyst working on a computer thousands of miles away. It's up to you.
And I think what we have to remember is Trump is the spiritual, but I will also say operational leader of this domestic terrorism effort. He tells them where to go. He tells them what to do. He tells them why they're angry. And so we need to start at the top, like any counterterrorism effort, which is total isolation of the president of the United States. Impeachment, yes. 25th Amendment, yes. Deplatforming, yes. All of the above. No money, no access to campaign funds. A complete isolation, because as the leader of a terrorist organization is viewed as a loser, as a not winner, it is harder for him to recruit. Look, he's going to have his radical elements. We will arrest them. We will isolate them. But what we have to make sure is that Donald Trump does not have a second act. I know I sound incredibly harsh right now calling the president this, but we are in the tactical response right now. Enough with the let's unity and stuff. This is a tactical effort right now to make sure that we protect American citizens and, of course, the next president of the United States.
So now we have to think about all the ways that we would get a terrorist, deplatform them. This is what we did with ISIS. You isolate the leadership, you make the leadership abandon, you shame them, you prosecute, you impeach, you do everything. The only way we get to peace is through at this stage, and that is total isolation of Donald Trump, because they would have you believe that it's better if Trump supporters think that he's okay. It's actually better if Trump supporters know that he's permanently damaged. That's the way terror groups work. Terror recruits want a winner.
Robert Grenier has thoughts on how to defeat violent extremists here in the U.S., and he grounds them in his personal experience fighting violent extremists overseas. Grenier is a former CIA counterterrorism chief. He was the CIA's station chief in Pakistan on 9/11. Grenier believes we may be witnessing the dawn of a sustained wave of violent insurgency within our own country, and he believes counterinsurgency tactics that worked abroad could work here. Robert Grenier, welcome. Good to speak with you.
Well, good to be on with you, Mary Louise. So I think as in any insurgency situation, you have committed insurgents who are typically a relatively small proportion of the affected population. But what enables them to carry forward their program is a large number of people from whom they can draw tacit support. And that's what I'm primarily concerned with here. I think what is most important is that we drive a wedge between those violent individuals and the people who may otherwise see them as reflecting their interests and fighting on their behalf. You know, even at the seeming height of the crisis immediately after 9/11, there really weren't that many members of al-Qaeda in Afghanistan. And the thrust of our campaign there was, yes, to hunt down al-Qaeda, but primarily to remove the supportive environment in which they were able to flourish. And that meant fighting the Taliban. And I think that is the heart of what we need to deal with here.
This week that there is until the end of April a persistent threat of domestic extremism, domestic terrorism carried out in the ideology and around this belief that the election was fraudulent, that all of those ideologies pushed by Donald Trump. But my question for you is around incitement. We had a policy, and it was very controversial. It was carried out under the Bush years and under the Obama years, of attacking terrorism at its root, of going after and killing, and in the case of Amr al-Awlaki, an American, a Yemeni American, with a drone strike for the crime of inciting violence, inciting terrorism. Mitch McConnell was in the Senate then. He was in the Senate after 9/11 too. How does Mitch McConnell, who understands that the way you root out terrorism is to take on, in the case of Islamic terrorism, kill those who incite it, how does he not vote to convict someone that he said on the floor of the Senate incited an insurrection?
The threat facing America today comes from within. Radical extreme conservatives, also known as domestic terrorists.
Have fact-based information to point to why certain threat actors are of more concern to the government, say white supremacists, violent extremists, and certain anti-government extremists that fall on the right side of the spectrum, like the militias, versus what President Trump has painted for the last year, this boogeyman of left-wing violent extremism, and using the label Antifa, which is not a group, but if you talk to the average American, they think it is, and they think Antifa is going to ruin all of our cities. So there's a lot of disinformation out there. Maybe 40-50% of the country has bought into the way that Trump was framing it, and in order to begin to try to correct some of that disinformation, they need to be very careful to stick to facts and do a rigorous analytic job.